Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about how Power Rangers needs to stop milking the nostalgia. So here's the thing. I'm a huge Power Ranger fan. I started when I was a little kid when it first came out, and I've been watching it ever since, even though I took a break between the Disney and the Nickelodeon era, starting after RPM. After towards the end of the Disney run, I started getting a little bit irritated with Power Rangers. It wasn't really the quality in which I loved. Everything was just kind of like not necessarily going downhill, but just kind of being like whatever, you know. Like the acting was getting worse. Some of the storylines were getting a little too bizarre. I got tired of constantly rehearing the same like voice cast and everything. Certain things started to like resemble each other, like the locations kind of just a little bit, and just a tiny bit. Like say like the construction workers quarry. Like I got tired of seeing that like in so many episodes, in so many different seasons. It's like pick a different location. But for the most part, the quality started like getting on my nerves, and it started getting on my nerve with RPM because I'm just like, wait, hold on, how are they in like this post-apocalyptic future if we know everything's gonna be okay with SPD and Time Force? I didn't understand that, so I just really didn't care for that season. It was a good season. I was just like watching, like okay, whatever. And then so when they did that whole revival thing of the Mighty Morphin one, I'm just like, what the heck is this crap? So I stopped watching. Then I checked out the first episode of Samurai, and I just couldn't take it. So I stopped for like the longest time, and then I didn't start rewatching it until Dino Charge. So yeah, I took like a long extended break, but then I decided to get back into it. And even though the Nickelodeon seasons aren't that great, they're like enjoyable for the most part. They're not stellar, but it's like okay, whatever. But now it's going back to that whole dismal, like whatever towards the end of the Neo Spawn era and the Hasbro era. Just like okay, whatever, you know. It's not as enjoyable as it used to be back in the day. But for the most part, I still watch it. However, there's one thing that's been getting on my nerves lately. It is nostalgia. They keep bringing back all of these like former Rangers and now former villains, but they're not really doing much of anything with them. And they're not giving them no good storylines. When they bring them back, it's like the strangest way. And it's like they're trying to bring back as many people as they can. And some people are lucky enough to even say just like one thing. And, you know, and it's really driving me nutty because I love this franchise. Power Rangers is a franchise. Power Rangers is a fandom. It's not as big as Star Trek or Star Wars, but it's getting there. Like, you know, they even have their own comic convention type thing. They sell tons of merchandise. It's been on the air for over 25 years. And so it's like, you know, it's a big, huge thing. And the most part for a lot of people, when they hear Power Rangers, they just say, oh, it's just that kid show and with giant like robots. It's more than just that. It's like, in my opinion, Power Rangers is on the same level as the Avengers, as the X-Men, any superhero team up. I don't understand why people dismiss it. There's been comedic stuff in the MCU, and DC and all that other stuff. So why do people always piss on Power Rangers, but they praise everything else, even when sometimes the DC and the Marvel stuff ain't as good? And yeah, I get it. Sometimes Power Rangers can be a bit corny. Like, you know, anybody knows that. You know what I'm saying? But it's not always like that. They've had some really deep seasons. They've had some really dark seasons. They've had some really memorable episodes. They have really pushed the limits of how far they're allowed to do on a kids network, and it's like people should really respect that. And the reason why is because people always assume, oh, It's like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with the high school stuff and the corniness and the jokes. Yeah, I get why people have that disdain in their mind. And I think of Power. That was like a complete. That was the very first season, and that was when Saban was really going for like the kiddie stuff. But you know, if you watch like In Space and Lost Galaxy and Time Force, you get some really good stuff, some really deep emotional stuff. But then, of course, when Saban brought it back and brought it to Nickelodeon, it went back to that juvenile, like, kiddie stuff with the humor. And I hate the humor in Power Rangers. I want humor out. But you know, even Disney brought back a little bit of that humor, but they brought it back like a tiny bit. Well, except for um, that one ninja one. God, what was it? Was it Ninja Force? Was that what it's called? Ninja Storm. That's it, Ninja Storm. Yeah, the villains were way too comedic in that, and they got on my nerves. But after that, you know, they would only have really like one or two characters who were comedic, and that was about it. So they because they're Disney, they had to have a little bit of that humor. But then Nickelodeon kind of overdid it. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about I'm sick and tired of all these like past like characters coming back, and Nickelodeon and Hasbro aren't doing much of anything with them. Now, when they did Ranger team ups, well, actually, let me tell you the truth. This is what really got me making this video. Lord Zed. Lord Zed is gonna be in Dino Fury. I think that's the new season. And I'm thinking to myself, why is Lord Zed coming back for it? There is no point for Lord Zed coming back. His story arc ended at the conclusion of In Space, and it was perfect. Like they had a perfect send off for that dude. He was no longer evil because of the Zordon energy wave. He was purified. He turned back into his human alien form, which he looked a little too human. I don't understand why he was so human and dressed so human. Like, why was he wearing human clothes? And clearly, him and Rita are not human and not from Earth, but yet they dressed human. I don't get that. But anyway, and it's like he had the perfect ending. And then we found out in the Disney era, at some point in time, him and Rita had like a kid together. Now I can buy that because you know when they was evil, we didn't see everything they did off screen, and there were times where they weren't in every season, so I can buy that and everything. And his son was just like a bratty little son, so I can buy that. That's like okay, whatever, that's acceptable. And then Rita had a good send off when she turned good, and she turned into the Mystic Mother. I mean, perfect send off. But now they're bringing back Lord Zed in some shape or form for a nostalgia bait, and just so they can milk it, just like Hasbro likes to milk money from all this Mighty Morphin stuff. And I'm just like, why? Why are you doing this? Like, they're gonna ruin a good thing. It's kind of similar to how people feel about the MCU Spider-Man when they're about to bring back some of the Sam Raimi villains and stuff. People don't want like Dr. Ock like ruined. They don't want the Green Goblin ruined because we know how Disney likes to throw in all that cheesy humor and one-liners and stuff. And those dudes had a pretty good arc in the Sam Raimi Spider-Verse. And so it's kind of like, I don't know if it's going to be like Lord Zed is really, really going to come back, or if it's going to be like an offspring, or is it going to be like a ghost figure, is it going to be a clone, is it going to be like the whole Goldar Maximus, which I will get into that a little bit later. So let's put a pin in that for now. So hours later, I have an update on the Lord Zed suit. I found a clip on YouTube of Lord Zed fighting the Dino Fury Rangers. I'll link the clip below in the description. It's in another language, so I don't know what they're saying. But yeah, the suit actually looks a whole lot better than like that initial picture, especially when he's like moving around. He's actually like fighting. Now his movements are slightly slow because the suit is so thick, but he is able to move around a whole lot better when he's fighting these Rangers than when he did Tommy, and I think it was in season 2. But yeah, the suit actually looks pretty decent. Like, it's not perfect per se, but because it's still, it does have that weird, strange vibe to it, but it's all right. It makes him look more beefier, more muscular. It's just certain parts of the metal plates just look slightly awkward, but also cool in a way. So I will give them credit for that. But I still sick and tired of all the nostalgia. Now let's talk about Ranger team ups. Ranger team ups were done so much better in the Fox Kids and the Disney era because they actually had a true storyline. It actually made sense. They actually took the time and the care to plot out a logical, well executed script, and then have the Rangers come back and have them all do something, not just a few of them, and not just Tommy. And people got to say stuff, people got to do stuff, and they didn't always use the Sentai footage. It was like their own stuff for the most part, and some of the team ups. And I remember one of the most memorable one of them all was in Wild Force. Then in Once a Ranger, it was even more iconic because here you have the current Operation Overdrive Rangers. They lost their powers, and then so their leader dude knew they needed new Rangers to take over and stuff. So he recruited Rangers of the past, because who better, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is, they lost their powers, and some of them haven't even received their powers yet, or some of them came from like the future. But for the most part, they all lost their powers. So they had the Mystic Knight dude bring back that power because he's like very, very, very powerful. And I can buy that, you know what I'm saying? The dude's super powerful. Somehow he's able to tap into the morphing grid, and he's able to, well, the morphing grid was kind of like short circuited at that time before Alpha had to fix it. But then, he was able to like rejuvenate their powers or make clone versions of the power somehow. And it's like, okay, cool, whatever, I can accept that. And what was so iconic about that is that it was Rangers from completely different teams. So it's like they all had different costumes. So we get to see a lot of that cool nostalgia from like other seasons and stuff. Now bringing the one dude back from the future, that was kind of weird. But like whatever. Because I didn't like him as the Red Ranger at all. Which was kind of weird because it's like he was the Red Ranger, Bridge, but yeah, he wasn't the leader of the team. Adam was, who was the Black Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. That ain't no sense, but like whatever. Adam's a way better fit than the Bridge dude or whatever his name was. And so they tugged on the nostalgia heartstrings. They did it in a good way. They had an actual reason for bringing them back, and they had an actual reason for getting rid of them, and they had a good actual reason for giving their powers back. However, in that very same episode, part of the nostalgia got on my nerve. I will put a pin in that for later. Now, things started getting bad when Nickelodeon started airing Power Rangers and Saban bought back the company, because Saban went kind of, I don't know what happened to the dude. Dude used to be great. He wasn't perfect. Like he had some like horror stories, some other Rangers complaining about him, but for the most part, the dude knew what he was doing back in the Fox Kids days. However, when he took over again, he screwed up big time. But once again, it's not the type of video. But let's talk about how he screwed up nostalgia-wise. He went overboard with it. In the Samurai episode, he brought back, I think there was two RPM team-ups. And the first one kind of pissed fans off because the actor who plays, I think his name is Scott, the red one, he was never demorphed. He never took his helmet off. And he said it's because we found out that RPM set in a different dimension. So it's like, oh, okay, I wish they would have said something like that before when I was kind of like dissing on that season when I watched it back in the day. So then we found out it's from a different dimension and they can't take off their helmets because of something with the air and they can't breathe it in our dimension, something like that. So like, okay, fine. But the dude never took off his helmet and it was just like the voice, and then he just did the voice and stuff. We find out it's because the actor is a union worker, and the people at Power Rangers, they hate union workers to death and they will not hire somebody. I think they're a little bit more lenient on it now, like now in the 2020s, but back in the day, they were not. However, in Dimensions in Danger, Gemma is able to breathe perfectly, like without her helmet. So it's like, yeah. Megaforce came around. Now I'm not gonna diss on Megaforce. I've actually enjoyed that season. It's pretty like enjoyable here and there. It's one of the better Nickelodeon seasons. A lot of people hate it because of two main reasons. One, they hate, or three reasons. One, they hate the Red Ranger dude. They talk about how his acting's not that great. Like, get over it, people. It's been so many years. They hate it because of the Power Ranger Battle War thing at the end of the season didn't live up to what they wanted to, which, yeah, I totally understand that was like not that great. It was an okay battle. It was an okay episode, but it wasn't that great. And then they also hate it because of how they milked the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger franchise. And so, yeah, they went overboard with that because I think it was like the 20th or 25th year anniversary, something like that. And it was Mighty Morphin everywhere. Like, it was just like insane. Like, they had they had a dude named Ernie who they hung out with, and he would give them like Froyo, and that was probably a reference to Ernie's juice bar. And they had like this giant tiki head thing that's supposed to be reminiscent to Zordon, and then they had like the little alpha wannabe dude thing, and it was just like too much nostalgia. And that's when it really started to hit me and stuff. And then what made things even worse was, okay, it was cool when they morphed into other past Rangers. That was awesome. But then they started bringing back like people for that war battle. And when they brought the Rangers back, people, some of them took off their helmets that was actually able to travel to New Zealand. And when they did, some of them really didn't do nothing. They just stood there and smiled. Like a lot of samurai people just stood there and smiled with their helmets off. And they didn't say not one word. And then you would have some people from like in space, like TJ and Cassie, they would say some memorable stuff. And that was nice. And then we had some scenes where a couple of other people would like help the civilians out. At least they helped the civilians out, but it was kind of like, why are you there and everything? But then later found out why. And then it's just kind of like the reason for them being there, because, oh, this alien dude is so powerful and they needed everybody to come. One, the huge battle was just a huge letdown because the villain never seemed that like impressive. His armada, yeah, there's like tons of them, but we've seen that before in space. Okay, we've seen an entire armada of past season villains and their foot soldiers. So that was nothing new. You know what I'm saying? And so and in space did it a whole lot better. 'Cause at least those Rangers in that season took care of everybody. And then they showed just like, you know, how vulnerable they can be. But then it's like, on top of that, then they would have like other episodes leading up to the big battle where they'll bring certain people back, like the Red Ranger dude from Samurai, which his character didn't do much. He just sat in that little froyo bar and gave a little advice and then left. And then that was like basically it. And it's like he didn't even show up for the final battle. So like, what was the point? And then of course there was all the unmorphed like helmet people who couldn't show up because of budget reasons, because Saban is very cheap. And it's just like, it was just a huge letdown. Like we was promised this huge momentous occasion and it was a huge letdown. And what they should have did is for that huge battle, They should have took it out of New Zealand, brought it back to America. That way, everybody could have came back. Well, except for the New Zealand actors, of course, but they have to fly over here. But all the American actors who are still in America, they could have been in this thing. But a lot of reason why they couldn't, because they didn't have the funds to fly there and back and get their own like hotel and food, because Saban would not pay for that stuff. And I don't blame them for not going over there. That's a huge expensive trip to go over there and back just to like say a few words and stuff. And so that was just a major, major, major letdown. But of course, they did it because they were trying to tug on the strings of nostalgia. But if you want to go a little bit stuff backwards, let's go back to Samurai when we had Bulk in that season, and we see that Skull had a son, and he was teaching Skull to be like a samurai dude. And what made it so strange is that one, there's no, I mean, you can't replace Bulk and Skull. You can't replace him with his son. Two, Bulk, I don't even believe Bulk and Skull's son had much interaction with the new cast of Rangers. They pretty much just did their own thing on the side. So it was kind of like they had their own little story, their own little show, which is really not too much nothing new, because Bulk and Skull always been known for that. But Bulk and Skull will always interact with the Rangers, either in their Ranger form or the civilian form. And I think they interact with the Rangers in the civilian form maybe once or twice, because Skull had a crush on the Pink Ranger, similar to how his father had a crush on Kimberly. And it's just like, you know, that's just too much of the old stuff. And it's just like, what was the point of having Bulk there if he didn't interact with this new cast? And not to mention, he's a lot older than them. So why would he be hanging out with a bunch of like teenagers or young 20-something-year-olds, you know? So it just never made no sense. Then going back to Megaforce, like we find out that, I forgot that one dude's name, the robot dude, the silver one. We found out that the Tiki Torch dude was, he was either a friend of Zordon's or he was created by Zordon. And so the silver robot dude, he was apparently like a last stop, like safety measure in case there was like something really bad happening in the universe and he was supposed to be activated. But yet all these past seasons, a lot of bad stuff happened and he was never activated. I think him on the Tiki, it's one of him on the Tiki dude. And it was just like, so they tried to like milk that nostalgia by saying Zordon had this last like ditch stopgap like measure, but Alpha never once brought it up. And so like you think Alpha would bring that up at some point in time, or somebody else would, but no. And it's just like all them past battles with the Earth nearly came to an end, and them two dudes did absolutely nothing. So I don't like how they try to tie that into the Mighty Morphin thing. Now going to Alpha. So when that Operation Overdrive team up episode happened, Alpha 6 somehow made it back to Earth. And when he did, they dismantled him and put him in a box for some bizarre reason. Why? Like, I don't know. Now, I don't mind them having Alpha back, because that was a cool thing, especially with Adam being there. But here's the strange thing. Alpha barely knows, Alpha 6 barely knows Adam. He only knew him from like a very, very, very short, brief time. And that was back when he was doing the hey, yo, 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 like the whole like ghetto thing that really drove like fans nuts. So he really doesn't know Adam all that well. But yeah, when he meets Adam, they act like they're like best buds and know all this other stuff about each other and know all this other stuff. And it's kind of like, how do you know that? And dude, you've been on Marinoid for like the whole time, and now you're back on Earth and been dismantled and stuff. Now my problem with that Alpha is that it's a slight nitpick. He's too tall. When they made the suit, for some bizarre reason, they made it for a tall person and not a short person. And it's like, why wouldn't you make it for a short person? And Alpha is always supposed to be short. So they did a pretty good job on the outfit. It looked a little cheaply made, also in my opinion. And I'll get to Lord Zed and Goldar in a minute about that. But yeah, it was just kind of like, they made this suit super tall, and it doesn't make no sense why Alpha would now be so tall and everything. And so that kind of got on my nerve, because now when they bring back all this older stuff, they remake it and they remake it in kind of like this cheap type fashion. Not to mention, Alpha's voice is different once again. And it's just like, why couldn't they just like record the sound in America, send it over to New Zealand and do that? Or find a New Zealand person who sounds similar to that Alpha that was Alpha 6. Now going back to Ranger team-ups, now we have the Ninja Steel and the Beast Morpher one, which were some of the worst team-ups I have ever seen in my life. And they was terrible only because there was no real plot. There was no real reason for bringing back past Rangers. So when we get to the Ninja Steel one, that was the Dimensions in Danger one. The one that focused solely on Tommy. Now, it was cool to see all these different variants of Tommy from them clone versions and stuff. But apparently what it is this one evil dude who we've never heard of in Power Rangers, Lord Dragon or something like that. It sounds like Draken a little bit, but it's not. And it's like, so Tommy's been fighting him, and so him and some other Rangers, and then the dude decided he was gonna clone a bunch of Rangers and all this other crap, and he had like this stupid arrow thing that was gonna destroy like I think like all dimensions or something like that, and so like it's basically just a Tommy filled episode where it's basically just Tommy running around doing his own thing, and so it's the Ninja Steel Rangers helping him. And it's kind of like, okay, that would have been fine if it was just him and him alone. But then we find out there are other Rangers in this thing too from past seasons. We get Kat from Mighty Morphin Zeo and Turbo. We get Rocky from Mighty Morphin Zeo in that Turbo movie. We get Trent from Dino Thunder. We get, God, I don't remember her name, but she's like the Silver Ranger in RPM. Then we get Coda from Dino Charge. We get Wes from Time Force. We get TJ from Turbo and In Space. And I think that's about, no, we get the Gold dude. We get the Gold Ranger guy. From Samurai. I believe that's it. No, Gia. We also get Gia from Megaforce, and that's it. And so it's like, okay, wow, cool. We're getting like all these people, man. This is gonna be like a really cool, awesome thing. But it was only a 20-minute episode. But it's like, okay, whatever, you know. Forever Red did a 20-minute thing, and it was awesome. So this is gonna be awesome too. This was not awesome. The past Rangers I just mentioned, they were all asleep in the stasis unit because they're about to be cloned. Like I said before, the whole episode just revolved around Tommy and the Ninja Steel Rangers. And then not only that, but when they did wake up, they barely had one line each to each other. Kat act like she didn't know who TJ, who Tommy, or who Rocky were. And the actress Catherine Sutherland has stated this over and over on her YouTube channel called Power Rangers Playback, where she has stated over and over there was really no point for her going back. They had nothing for her to do. She barely said anything, and she acted like she didn't know who the other like people were. And it don't make no sense because all these Rangers have met up at some point in time. And like I said before in my last video, Tommy didn't even have no interaction with Trent. The dude worked on the same team together. He ain't had no interaction with TJ. He literally handpicked TJ to be the new Red Turbo Ranger. He had no interaction with Wes, and he teamed up with him in Forever Red. And then at the very end, we see him hold hands with Kat after he pretty much just ignored her in the entire episode. And not to mention, him and Gia should know who they are, and they didn't have no interaction. And it just made no sense. It made no sense for these past Rangers, these veteran Rangers, to come back. There was no real storyline for them. And they only came back for the simple fact that Hasbro and Saban at that time, because they was both in, well, it was mostly just a Saban thing at that time, but they did buy it out with the Beast Morpher thing. They just wanted to bring back past Rangers and have people go, oh my God. And, you know, it's like there was nothing there. And then Tommy gets to, of course, defeat the main baddie with his Falcon Zord, so that was cool to see. But no, he defeated like the Arrow thing, and it's just like, It was just all about him. It was all gonna be about him. They should never brought the other people back. Never. It was a waste of a trip. It was a waste of time. Oh, not to mention, there was barely any action, like martial art wise, from the past Rangers. I don't understand how Forever Red had the same runtime as Dimensions in Danger, yet there was little to no action when it came to the past Rangers. Of course, Tommy did all the action, and the Ninja Steel people did some action, but mostly it was just, hey, pull out your blasters and start blasting somebody. That's basically all it was. And that was so weak. Like, it reminded me of that, I think, what was it? Time Force, and what was it? I think the Lightspeed Rescue one, when they had this, like, okay, once they got all in their battle modes, this is like, hey, let's blast the bad guys. And it's just like, no, don't blast the bad guys, fight them. Then we probably get one of the worst bizarre team ups ever, and that was in Beast Morphers when they brought back Jason, the original Red Ranger. People was hyped. Jason has not been seen in Power Rangers since the Turbo movie, and so no, he hasn't been seen since Wild Force, that Forever Red team up. So people were really hyped to see this dude. You know what I'm saying? Because let's see, Wild Force took place around like the 2000s, and when I was in college in 2001, they had Ninja Storm. So he really hadn't been back in about 20 years, to tell you the truth, 20 or 19 years. So people were hyped, like people were really excited for this. And this is when the whole Goldar Maximus thing comes in. Now, Goldar Maximus was a hybrid of Goldar and I think maybe somebody named Maximus, probably, I don't know. I forget, it was somebody else. And so they brought him back. And when they did, okay, it was a fusion. So when it was a fusion, he didn't look the same. Okay, I get that. I can buy that, you know what I'm saying? But what I couldn't buy was how god-awful they made him look. They made his suit look like some of the cheapest material I've ever seen. And not only did they make it look cheap, but he didn't even look gold. Like, I mean, yeah, in the Sentai footage, he really looked gold. Like, he looked like he was wearing gold armor. But it's nothing but foam, like a foam costume with gold spray paint and stuff. And even when they made him in the American Power Ranger version, they did a better job making him look gold and stuff. And so this Goldar, in my opinion, is about as bad as the one in that 2017 movie. And so this they made a cheap costume, and I don't understand why. You know, like, what was the point in bringing him back if you weren't going to give us the real Goldar, or if you were just going to give us some crap version, you know? And not only that, but I think they brought him back because his sword was still around or something like that. But I thought his sword got disintegrated when he got disintegrated in space. But anyway, yeah, and it wasn't even the same voice actor. It was somebody completely different. Oh, that reminds me too. Alpha 6 voice. So basically this new Goldar is so powerful and they need somebody to, like, you know, stop him. So what did they do? First, they bring in past Rangers from Ninja, Dino Charge. And so they only brought back the ones who actually live in New Zealand. Of course, they can just, you know, just like drive on over there. I think the gold dude, I forget where he's from. He might be from New Zealand. No, I think he's from Canada or America. But anyway, he came back. So basically all the American actors who was in Dino Charge, they did not return. It was just all of the New Zealand ones, which weren't that many. So it was basically just Jace, Gold Dude. And I think there might have been somebody else who came back just for the fun of it, but I can't remember who exactly. And they were unmorphed and stuff like that, and they had their own episode before that. But then they decided to bring in the rest of the Dino Charge cast. Not all of them, 'cause that's a big cast. They only brought back like the main core ones, but they were unmorphed. They just had their helmets on because they didn't show up. So it was really strange to see Jace and the Gold Dude and I think somebody else walk around and interact in their civilian clothes while the Dino other Charge Rangers had their costumes on and their helmets on. That made absolutely no sense. And then when everybody had the morph, of course, They were already morphed, and then everybody else had to morph, and it was just bizarre. Then we get to the whole Jason episode. So they need somebody to stop this whole Goldar Maximus, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And so they go through the archives, and they all like they tell the It's been so long since I watched it, I forgot the Red Ranger's name. They tell him to go and to this little place in the lab where it's kind of like this strange portal type thing. He's there, and I think I know I'm skipping and messing up some parts. It's been a while, only because I didn't care for that episode. So my memory isn't that like perfect for that episode. But somehow, okay, let's get to this point first. First, it's like a meteorite, and inside the meteorite is the red power coin. How did the red power coin get in that little meteorite dino artifact type thing? Who knows? Nobody knows. The writers don't even know. Basically, it's just like a fossil. And in that fossil is the red power coin. And this doesn't make no sense. First of all, the red power coin was destroyed when Rocky had it. And so that power is now kaput. And we all know from the In Space one where Adam comes back, if you morph with a damaged morpher, it can have dire strengths on your like heart and body and stuff. So it can basically kill you. So there's no way Jason can morph with that. However, Jason was able somehow to bizarrely morph in Forever Red. And that's never been explained. So I will give the Fox people discredit in saying that they screwed that up without explaining it. But it was still a great episode. Then, you know, Jason shows back up for the huge battle thing, unmorphed, for the Megaforce thing. And we don't know how he got his powers back yet again. And not only did he have his powers in that, but now his power coin is mysteriously in this like fossil type thing. And it's just like, how did it get there? There's no explanation. When Jason does show up, he doesn't explain it. Now, we can always say, okay, maybe Mystic Knight probably restored his power. But we never seen him do it on screen, off screen. We never heard of him do that. So that could be a factor. It could not be. Maybe something else restored it. We just don't know. Now, some people are trying to say that when Jason transferred his power onto Rocky, Jason was still morphed in that one Mighty Morphin Power Ranger episode. The reason for that is because the three actors couldn't take their helmets off because they had already left the show in the beginning of like halfway into the season. So people are saying maybe the Rocky had duplicate powers, and maybe Jason didn't have the. Maybe Jason still has his power coin. That's a possibility. But let's get back to when Jason shows up. They, like I said, they never explain how he lost his coin, and then when he does show up, it's the Red Ranger from Beast Morphers. He's in that little portal thing, and he's there supposed to be talking to like somebody who can help him, and then Jason just transports there. And then he gives him his power coin. He's all like, let's show him some real dino power. And I'm just like, how did Jason get there? How does Jason even know who this dude is? How? You know, they don't explain nothing. Jason doesn't explain how he lost his coin. Jason doesn't explain how he got his powers back in the past. Jason doesn't explain the big battle that they had in the Megaforce thing. There's nothing explained. There's no real story to this. There's no real explanation. It's just like the writers all like, hey, look, Power Rangers for kids. Kids are stupid. I just chop a bunch of stuff together and throw it out in them. But what about the older people, the teenagers and the adults? You gotta remember, the main people watching Power Rangers is not kids. It's adults that grew up with this. And we're a whole lot smarter than a bunch of kids. So we need some explanation and stuff. But then things get worse. Then, all of a sudden, they bring back the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with their helmets on. Yep, they couldn't get nobody to come back. Nobody wanted to come back. Or they probably didn't even ask nobody. And so, once again, we have them morphed with new voice actors. We don't really know who is under the black and yellow helmet. Or the pink one for that matter. If the pink one did show up. I'm not even sure if she showed up or not. I can't remember. That's how much I'm trying to block this episode out my mind. And so it's kind of like we don't know if it's Adam, Zach, Trini, Aisha. Like we just don't know. Kat or Kimberly, if the pink one showed up. We just don't know. And when he interacts with them, I don't even know if he interacts with them. And if he does, it's just kind of like, whatever, man. Like, I'm just done with this crap already. And then to make things even more worse, they bring back the Dino Thunder Rangers. Not all of them, just the three main core ones. And once again, helmets stay on, a new voice actors are doing the thing because the people didn't come back. And this is what's so strange about the Red Ranger. He actually lives in New Zealand. How were they not able to bring that man back? How? How were they not able to bring him back? He's like, you know, he lives there. Now, the Yellow Ranger, she used to live in New Zealand, but now she lives in America. So she didn't come back. And the blue one, he lives in Canada, so he didn't come back. So I know they want to have this huge Dino team up, but it just wasn't done properly. Okay, Coda, he was the other one who came back in Dino Charge. And so, yeah, okay, now I remember he was the one who walking around unmorphed as well. He always comes back, that dude. But then it's like, you know, seriously, man, how do you not bring back a man who actually lives in New Zealand? Like, how do you bring back all these other people with their helmets on? It's kind of like, look, if you can't get them back, don't bring back their costumes with somebody else inside and a different voice cast. Just don't do it. Because it's going to look stupid and it's going to look bad on their part. And it does look bad on their part. People have been complaining about this. It was not a good team up whatsoever. And Jason, I don't even think Jason fights that much in this episode. And it's like, what was the point in bringing this dude back? It was pointless. And I think even he complained about that. I'm not 100% sure. And it was just pointless. How is it in Forever Red they had a pretty clear plot? How is it in Forever Red they had unmorphed and morphed fights? And they wasn't able to do none of this good stuff in these last crossovers. It's just pathetic. And now we bring you to what started this video. Lord Zed, he's back. Why is he back? Don't know. The episode hasn't aired yet. But he has a brand new costume. And it's okay. Now, the original one, of course, is a million times better. And the movie one was even a million times, like a bazillion times better than that one. But that was just for the movie in a different dimension and stuff. But yeah, the TV version of Lord Zed is memorable. He was great in season 2. They ruined him after that because he was too scary for the kids and everything. And so they had to comedic him up in the 3rd season, and he's never been the same since. And so it's like, the dude's costume was iconic. The dude's costume was awesome. And now they come out with this, which is like some weird hybrid. And it's like, okay, he looks shorter. First of all, even though he's tall, he looks shorter. And not to mention his metal plates, they're not even sticking to his body. They're extending out from his body. And it makes it look weird. Like, it's an okay look, but he looks strange. And he has a weird neck guard thing. And it just doesn't look right. And you know they're going to get, they have to get a different voice actor. Because sadly, the actor who portrayed him recently passed away. I believe it was last year. Rest in peace, dude. And we know when they get a new voice actor, it's not going to sound nothing like the original one. Nothing at all. And so it's kind of like they're only bringing back Lord Zed because, well, they just want to milk nostalgia. They want these older fans to be happy. That's nice. But give us something real. You know what I'm saying? Give us something good. Like, don't give us crap. Because when you give us crap, we complain about it. Then you get mad at us complaining about it on YouTube. Also, there's another reason why I'm tired of nostalgia. It had to do with the Ninja Steel episode, the dangers and the dimensions and danger. It was when I saw Tommy and knowing that he has a kid, JJ, and I stopped and I thought about it. Then I looked at him and I'm just like, I never really like thought about this, but Tommy is a parent. He's an older man now. He's no longer that teenager from Mighty Morphin. He has moved on with his life, had a child, and is still a Power Ranger. And I'm just like, it reminds me of something. Um, what was her name? Demetria, and who's that Yellow Ranger from Lost Galaxy? Maya. When the original Turbo Rangers left, they had to leave because Demetria told them that they are now adults. They're no longer teenagers. It's time for them to move on and live adult lives, and for a new team to take over. Now, of course, the real reason was because Jason David Frank didn't want to do Power Rangers no more, and so they fired the rest of the older cast. But storyline wise, it's kind of like, yeah, this dude's been like, a lot of these Rangers been like out of commission for like many years and haven't remorphed in like forever. And now they're like coming back in the older age and they're still fighting that good fight. But it's kind of like, it defeats the purpose of what she said and what Maya said. At the end of Lost Galaxy, Maya told him that their battle was over. And like, it's time for the next generation of heroes to take over. But until then, they put the swords up until they were needed again, like years later and stuff. And it's just kind of like, that is perfect closure. They had a beginning, they had a middle, and then they had an end. Many of these Rangers had a true conclusion to their season story arc, and then they was ready to move on with their lives. So it's kind of like when you keep bringing them back now that they're older, it's kind of like, and you see they still fighting after all these years, it's just kind of like, it really defeats that purpose of like true closure. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.